Wagner boss Yevgeny Prigozhin has been killed in a plane crash in Russia with 9 other people on board also dead. The TASS news agency is reporting that 7 passengers and 3 crew were on board the Embraer aircraft en route from Moscow to St. Petersburg. The jet is said to have crashed in the Svaya region north of Moscow. Multiple videos posted on social media appear to show the jet crashing. Let's bring in Bish Johnson. He's a security expert and retired U.S. Army captain. Good to see you and thanks for your time.
Good evening.
You know, there's a way the news has been couched and it looks like there's a little bit of uncertainty whether he's there or not. Let us in. That could be possibility of having someone on the manifest but not being on the aircraft.
Very correct.
And at the moment, we are yet to get more details from the Russian agency that reported that news to give confirmation whether this has truly occurred. But again, one of the key concerns, we both spoke about what's happening in Niger the other time, and we know that the group has been operating in some of these countries on the continent. Now, that with this new development, what do you think this may mean for where Wagner is operating in Africa?
Well, let's assume without considering that he's dead. But I have to tell you that with that particular security company, that company is more or less like a branch of Russian military. So I would be surprised if there is not already a succession plan in case anything happens to any one of the commanders. That's always been the case, you know, with this kind of organizations, is that there will always be someone that will step in to take the position of the commander in the event that the commander is demised. So I will not be surprised that such plan is already in place. Now you have to understand as well too that he has not always been on the good book of Vladimir Putin. And so I would think that this death, if in fact it is, may have some kind of foul play in it. And so we also not be surprised that Russia as a state has also made provision or who is going to take charge of the Wagner group. And so in essence, what I'm saying is that we have, you know, maybe symbolic impact, but operationally, it will have little or no effect on what the Wagner group is doing, and will continue to do.
You know, let's also situate this because for the first time, just about 2 days ago, he was seen in a video presumed to have been shot on the continent in Africa, where he also spoke about its operations here on the continent. For those who are close watchers of that mutiny that occurred in June, Putin was categorical when he said everyone had been forgiven, even when his closest ally had asked Prigozhin to come, I think the Belarusian leader.
Yeah.
Now, yes, Lukashenko. Now, going from what is happening now, is it safe to think that this just because for some of the eyewitnesses, they say the aircraft actually blew up before it touched down?
I think it would be naive for anyone to think that because Putin said he has forgiven everybody, therefore he has forgiven everybody. Everybody that has rebelled against Putin, one of 3 things will happen to you. Is either you're poisoned and you died from that poison, or you're poisoned and you return to Russia and you're sent to prison, or you are killed one way or the other. So it would be very, very naive for him, Prigozhin himself, to think that after embarrassing Putin internationally, that
it was an embarrassment,
serious embarrassment, that he will forgive him just like that. I don't think that is safe to say.
You know, I'm looking at journalists across the world, and you know, for the BBC, it says Prigozhin presumed dead, and if you also look at what Sky is also saying, almost everyone is trying to be very careful,
Sure,
because there's no definitive, you know, statement saying that his body has been recovered. You know, in cases like this, when it has to do with emergencies or accidents that involves a military or civilian aircraft, what's the best way to go about getting the actual gist of what's happened?
I think the first thing that has to happen is a proper investigation. Now, whether proper investigation without all the call of it will take place in Russia, I can't tell you for certainty. But under normal circumstances, what has to happen is that there has to be some proper investigation to determine the cause of the crash, identify the bodies through DNA testing, recover some bodies or some body parts and stuff like that. Because it's possible that his name had been listed on the manifesto of that aircraft. And at that level, I don't expect this man just not to envisage, study situations. So we have to slow down a bit until there is an authoritative confirmation, maybe not by the Russians. If the Russians can allow independent bodies to come and carry out that investigation to tell us that authoritatively this man was on that aircraft, he is dead, his body has been recovered, DNA samples affirm that he was in that aircraft.
Because now you took us down memory lane talking about some of the key people that may have crossed Putin in times past. And if you look at it, it's a long list, and they call them the enemies of Putin, and some of them he's been suspected to have killed these people. But again, that's a suspicion,
sure.
And it remains that. The very latest there, we've seen Lukashenko, I meant to say, yeah, Yevgeny, yes. But coming back to what's happening in Africa, you say that this ordinarily will not affect operations here. But again, what does it mean for the continent that is given to building its trust on a mercenary group that is got a face that has been driving that group, in this case Prigozhin. So how do you now leave a Prigozhin leadership of the Wagner group to perhaps maybe an unknown person taking off from where Prigozhin left off?
The Wagner group?
Yes.
Sure, it's a private security company, at least that's what we are told. But a lot of the influential personalities in that security company have serious ties and connection to Russian military. So I believe that it is a branch of Russian military because most of its funding is from Russian military. And so, yeah, a new leader may not be as pragmatic as Prigozhin was, but with the way this, the group is structured, there will be someone that will take his place. And that person will work in accordance with what the state of Russia wants. And so in terms of affecting their operations in the areas that they are operating right now, there will be not that much significant impact because these kind of organizations do not die with the founder. You can see it with ISIS, you can see Al-Qaeda, even when they are pragmatic leaders, Bin Laden or what's the ISIS leader, even when they were taken out, that did not mean the end of those organizations because at some point those organizations grew bigger than their founders. And so their founders were more or less like symbolic leadership, but the operational leadership rested in some other people within the organization.
Well, Prigozhin earned his reputation by publicly criticizing Putin, the Russian general, say, in its war or a military operation in Ukraine. how does this work for people who so much believe, for the group who so much believe in Prigozhin? Do you think that his death just may cause a further fraction within the forces there?
Yeah, it's possible. Most cases when a pragmatic leader like Prigozhin was, when they die, it's not easy to find someone that goes in and fits in place exactly like the leader, like such pragmatic leader. So there may be one or two skirmishes here and there, but because this particular organization is more or less a Russian military organization, so they will manage it. Somebody will be able to step in place of Prigozhin and be able to still run their operations.
And in this case, we're looking at Niger, for instance, and some of these other countries where they had hoped that Russia would come to their aid. The BRICS nation, they are already having a meeting here in South Africa, where Putin is attending virtually. Yes. And he's also spoken about freeing Africa, and also his statement there resonates across the continent. So the Russian association with the BRICS nation and Africa, how does it work with this new development? Because the face, if you say is not just a mercenary group, but it looks like an extension of the Russian military. In that case, it looks like an end in sight.
Yeah, it's sure it's a mercenary group, at least from what we can see in the surface. But underneath is an extension of Russian armed forces. The reason why this is the case is because it's Russian proxy military, so that they will be able to go in, do whatever thing they need to do for the interest of Russia, without necessarily having to follow international norms, right? If the Russian military were to go there, they will have to follow Geneva Conventions and all the other international conventions that are already put in place in terms of armed conflict. But with this private group now going in, they don't have to follow all those things. And so what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, one person, the pragmatic leader, is gone. Nevertheless, somebody will succeed him who will continue to carry out those activities that are in the interest of Russia, as planned by the Russian state. Is it a coincidence that Prigozhin is talking about freeing Africa, and Putin, in the statement that you just alluded to, is also talking about freeing Africa? So that tells you that there is that kind of working in tandem with the state of Russia.
In this case, what should Africa do? Because it looks like just as Africa is trying to run away from one form of colonialism, whether it is from the West, it seemed to be pulled towards another form of colonialism, looking to the East or Far East.
Yeah, Africa is caught in the middle. But you have to look at this. You have to look at it from this context, particularly those Francophone Africans, right? The challenges we face in Africa are so many, and the solution to those challenges cannot be found in any one particular region or bloc. So Africa, up to this time, for example, if you look at the war in Ukraine, African leaders have maintained what I may call strategic neutrality or silence, because they realize that the solutions to the challenges that Africans face is not to domicile in one particular bloc or region. They will have to go to other places to be able to find solutions to their challenges. So there are times that they work with the West for their interests, for the interests of Africans. And there are some other times that they may have to look outside the West to be able to get the things that they need. For example, those issues that are happening in those Francophone countries, the new colonialism in those Francophone countries, they may not seek solution to those problems in the West. It may be a better option for them to look towards Russia to be able to tackle those problems. It's unfortunate as it is, but that is the situation we find ourselves. We find ourselves between two heavy blocks. And most cases, that is the way it works. If you want to achieve what you want, you go to these people, you get this, and then you go to the other people, you get that. So long as all of those things are in the interest of your people.
Well, let's quickly see if we can close on this. There's an arrest warrant on the Russian President Putin, making it almost impossible for him to physically be present at the BRICS meeting in South Africa. What does this say of other countries that are not signed up to the protocol that, for instance, the United States? I know you're very conversant with that. What does this say about, because if the Wagner group is running away from war crimes or not following the Geneva Convention, and that's why they are doing this on behalf of the larger Russian military, how does the world address such a situation whereby world leaders commit such atrocities and we never bring them to justice?
Well, it's almost impossible to bring Vladimir Putin to justice. Because attempting to do that may be catastrophic for the world. And so, even though he's been declared wanted, I don't think there's any country that will actually arrest him and hand him over to the ICC. Even had he even come to South Africa will not arrest him and hand him over to ICC, although they are required to do so. So there are some countries that their leaders will be brought to justice. The countries that are not as powerful as Russia, as the United States or the United Kingdom, that their leaders may be brought to justice. But these other superpowers, whether it's US or Russia or China, you may never be able to bring them to justice, because who is going to arrest them? Who will hand them over? You saw when Omar al-Bashir, the former Sudanese president, he also had an arrest warrant on him, but he was able to come to South Africa, even though they arranged for him to exit the country much earlier than he had planned. But South Africa was required by their own treaty that they signed up to arrest and hand him over. And so South Africa didn't hand over Omar al-Bashir, so how do you think they would have handed over Vladimir Putin? It's almost impossible for them to do that.
Captain Bish, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.